I mean, well, do you think we're going to get a qualifying session in today? I mean, to say, sorry, I am absolutely unsure what is going on here. Interlagos qualifying should have started nearly almost 90 minutes ago, but as you can tell, the timer says 18 minutes. But of course, I can see the delay. Apparently, they've delayed it until 7:30, but it looks like we're going to end up having to wait. I mean, maximum now 5 o'clock local time. Weather isn't getting any better. I'm going to ask you the poll: will qualifying be delayed till tomorrow? And I have to say this, I think yes. This doesn't look good, folks. I think, honestly, since of course it is now like 4:30 local time in Interlagos, with of course the daylight coming in, ending around 6 o'clock local time. They've only got 30 minutes maximum, and yeah, that's right, John. Of course, I mean, oh dearie me, Bournemouth, what a performance they put in, eh? As well as Newcastle. Gotta say it, the Premier League is a very, very tough cookie to crack. I've got to say, gotta give credit to Bournemouth. Monday, oh my, yeah, but dude. Monday, dude, I don't think Formula 1 are allowed to stay until Monday. That's the problem. And we have to remember, I mean, I know we've got like almost a 3-week gap between Brazil and Las Vegas, but I've got to say, obviously, due to contractual obligations, I think, since obviously I don't know whether the stewards will be allowed to like do any work on Sunday, since of course, on Monday, I beg your pardon, since of course, without stewards, you can't run a race. You cannot like run any test sessions, any practice, any qualifying without marshals and stewards at the track, or any officials or safety workers around the track. And of course, you have to realise, I mean, obviously, rain delays are not just for the safety of the drivers, but it is also for the safety of the marshals, officials, track of people doing, monitoring around the track, the helicopters, and of course, crucially, the spectators. For those of you wondering, yes, qualifying is delayed, and I have to say, if in 30 minutes' time, there is no qualifying, I think we're all going to get an announcement soon that qualifying will be postponed until tomorrow. And I have to say, from what I've heard, the body language of the drivers and the team suggests that qualifying is very unlikely to be held, unless, of course, in 10 minutes' time, the FIA and Liberty Media say otherwise. And, of course, look, we're not going to see, like, the FIA give up on this right now, but I think they will give this another 15-odd minutes to see if the rain does properly ease up. But of course, the weather forecast does suggest that not only will the rest of the day be heavy rain, but it's going to look bad for tomorrow's forecast. And of course, I was on Chazza HD's stream talking on about what's been going on at Red Bull. Of course, Christian Horner, there's been debates over, as Christian Horner held Red Bull to ransom. Should Red Bull have kept Adrian Newey instead of Horner? I mean, obviously, it is important to remember Horner became team principal of Red Bull back in 2005 when he was only 32 years old. And he was responsible for hiring all their best engineers and all the people in place. Herbert Marquez, junior advisor for the academy. Adrian Newey as the lead designer, designing all those winning cars for Vettel, Webber, Ricciardo, and Verstappen. it will rain the whole day tomorrow in Interlagos. Yeah, that's the problem. But of course, I think the question is how heavy will the rain be? And we also have to remember the 2021 Belgian Grand Prix, before ground effects even came back to Formula 1, saw the race virtually cancelled. But of course, all the cars came out to do one lap of full racing, which of course allowed Max Verstappen to win the race on half points. But of course, the new points regulations have stated since that in order to give out any points, you must complete at least 25% race distance in order to give points out for the race. So yeah, I think obviously a 25% race distance around Interlagos works out to at least 18 laps. Of course, I know there's been people saying that they're going to use the sprint quali as the official race qualification grid order, but thing is though, because of commercial reasons, they cannot just give up on official qualifying. Apparently, the weather is out bad or for the whole of the whole of the upcoming week until Sunday the 10th. Oh dear. And of course, just so you know, sunset in Sao Paulo is 6:30 local time. So I think it's currently now 4:30 in local Sao Paulo. So all I can say is that I am giving this at least another 25 minutes before they have to make an announcement. They'll use FP1 for the grid if qualifying cannot happen. FP1, is that what the official rule says? I don't know about that. That sounds a bit wrong. I mean, especially when you consider they all did sprint qualifying. I mean, I just think that's a bit of a waste considering that in sprint qualifying, they were pushing more or less to the limit. I know I saw someone say that not everyone necessarily pushes to the limit in sprint qualifying, but I think that's totally wrong, to be honest. Because, like, I mean, in FP1, 2, and 3, like, everyone's doing, like, simulation runs for the race and qualifying. Like, in sprint, though, obviously you're fighting for some sort of grid position, surely, even if, of course, it's only 33% points for the sprint race. They'd be better off using the championship standings. I don't know. Well, there are some cases in some seasons where maybe you have a start to the season, but then in the second half of the year, your car loses a lot of speed, like we've seen with Max's Red Bull. So that's going to be very controversial. But of course, he is going to be starting 5 places lower than where he will be. Where he would be starting, since of course he's got a 5-place grid penalty if the race can go ahead. And I think obviously, surely with that grid penalty, that surely has to go over down. That has to be handed down to the next race at Las Vegas, where of course, since of course this is a power unit change, which of course he has exceeded his allocation of power unit components for the season. So 5 places will be taking place at Las Vegas. Well, apparently, according to Will F1, FP1 will decide the grid, which I think is a bit odd, but I don't know what to say about that. I will be streaming for another 20 odd minutes, to be honest, to see what comes next. Obviously, the official timing screens still haven't shown any signs of qualifying commencing. Apparently, on my timing screens, it says 23.5 minutes to go until qualifying starts. But oh, someone said it in the Chatter HD stream. Okay, so I suppose someone has got the rule book in front of them. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm using my normal live stream, so I can't actually go onto the internet and look across. But time window ends in 90 minutes. Well, the problem is though, Sao Paulo sunsets in 6:30 local time in Interlagos. So for me, I think the track officials only really have about 55, less than 55 minutes remaining. And realistic, and of course, we need like a 4-hour qualifying. I know there, Arvin, lowest set lap time of the season is P1. Fastest is last place on race grid. Okay, I don't know what you mean there. Hello there, Michael Arvin. Have I ever seen you on my stream before? Have you changed your name? I'm getting a bit confused. Stefano Domenicali is now consulting with all the F1 teams. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know what you quite mean there, Michael Arvin. Lowest set lap time of the season is P1. I'm really confused by what you mean. Can you please explain what you just said? Because I'm really confused there, Michael Arvin. Like, that doesn't fully compute with me, I'm afraid. Like, that's really, I'm dyslexic, so obviously sometimes if you say something to me, then I might get confused if you don't explain it properly. No quality due to, well, it's most like, well, I mean, if we don't get an announcement in like 20 minutes maximum, then I will be postponed until tomorrow. But I'm only doing this live stream that, like, obviously we've got no qualifying going on. I've been waiting for like 90 minutes now. I was watching Chazza HD stream because I was getting so restless, and yeah, qualifying is not commencing. It's just so frustrating. I mean, 4 hours ago, 4 hours ago, it was really good in Interlagos, but of course, since we are in a tropical part of the equator, I mean, obviously, it likes to rain very heavily around this time of year in Brazil, since, of course, I think Sao Paulo is really very close to the equator. And I know, obviously, in the southern hemisphere, it's actually summertime. Although, of course, I know half of Brazil is located in the northern hemisphere, unlike Argentina and Chile, which are both southern hemisphere countries, along with Uruguay and Paraguay, and of course the likes of South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. I think, I don't know, and then of course you get countries like India, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines that are all very close to the equator. So I know in Indonesia it's just usually tropical weather all year round, so it's either massively hot or heavy rain. Although, of course, I am well aware that the likes of China and Hong Kong are very much located in the northern hemisphere. So, and of course, if you go to northern China, there is a lot of, the weather is absolutely freezing cold near Beijing, Heilongjiang, and Mongolia, Inner Mongolia, Tibet, what's it, Xinjiang. I know they're all very politically charged areas in China due to safety car is out on the track yet, exploring the conditions. I mean, the problem is with these modern F1 cars is that they produce a lot of spray in the wet. I mean, we had problems at 2021 Belgium. We also had problems at the 2016 Monaco and Brazilian Grand Prix that year with the shorter, narrower cars, by the way, with the 1.8 meter wide machinery of the time. Since Pirelli, it has to be said, Pirelli really are not good at, are seriously struggling to make a decent full wet tyre. Thank you to whoever has liked the video. Northern Thailand is just like Valencia at the moment. Okay, that's interesting. So does that mean it's warm? Is it sunny? I'm not entirely sure what. I mean, I know when you get to like December, January time, but Spain does get a little bit cold. But I'm not sure what it's like. I mean, I presume it's like mildly warm at this time of year. Because I think Thailand is just slightly north of the equator, just about. Although, of course, I have seen like videos of people in Vietnam, northern Vietnam and northern Thailand actually wearing warm clothes when it gets to winter time. But if there's no quality due to rain, do a reverse race order start. Yeah, but Max has got a 5-place grid penalty. Like, he's got new components in his power unit. I mean, that's. I know, obviously, you would love to see an exciting race, but come on, man. Like, no. I know, obviously, it'd be exciting to watch Norris and Verstappen try and get through the field, but dude, we've got a serious championship on our hands now. Formula E pre-testing has had to move from Girona to Girona from Valencia due to flooding. Oh yes, I forgot. Yes, how can I forget? Oh yeah, the flooding. Oh my god, how can I forget? I'm so sorry. Yes, obviously, rest in peace everyone who perished in the flooding. Was it this week? Really sad. So that's what you mean. It's a lot of tropical weather. Sorry, I don't know why. Yeah, the flooding. I mean, yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that. Just I was even watching the news yesterday, and on the live stream, by the way, and yet I completely. Yeah, I mean, I even saw that press conference with Mika Arteta giving his best wishes and all that. So what the? But yeah, thank you for 2 likes. Of course, I think in 15 minutes' time we will get an announcement. Surely, 15 minutes' time, an announcement will have to come because this is just absolutely untenable. To be honest, there's no way. I think honestly, latest start for qualifying has got to be like 15 past 5 local time, at least maximum. But of course, the problem is, of course, there's a chance that we might not even see Q3 commence if the rain suddenly intensifies like before the sun sets. I know in the 2015 American Grand Prix, we had Q3 cancelled when the rain intensified so much to the point that the officials realised it was better off to cancel Q3 and make Q2 the official qualifying or the official qualifying classification. So yeah, okay. Apologise for the whole modern up with Thailand and Valencia. Yeah. I mean, in this side of the world where we 2013 Q1 happened on Saturday and Q2 and Q3 took place on Sunday. I forgot about that because obviously Australia being a race that takes place at like, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning here in Britain is a bit confusing. Like, I can't even remember, like, I wasn't even watching that race live because, which is a shame because, of course, Kimi Räikkönen won the race. I only saw the highlights. And it actually took place on my birthday, so, you know, that's the only time Kimi Räikkönen actually won a race on my birthday, amazingly enough. Like, I know some people, like, if you're born in, like, January, February, or even December, then, or even mostly in August, where, of course, like, the F1 races are not taking place, then the chances of, well, the chances of anyone winning a race on your birthday is very unlikely, but Michael Arvin, whoever said F1 was going to assign positions or freestyle, what's the difference if reverse order? Oh, yeah, well, oh yeah, qualifying postponed. Yeah, I called it. No surprises here. Yeah, absolutely no surprise. Yeah, this was so inevitable, to be honest. I mean, I only came on here because I know all of you will be like twiddling your thumbs, wondering what's going to happen next. Oh, the season ends before your birthday. Oh, damn. Yeah, so. I mean, the thing is, though, obviously, it's only in the past few seasons, like, I think since 2021 that we've had not 2021, 2020 that we've had F1 races end in December. I think the last time an F1 season ended in December must have been like 1965 or something stupid. I think it's beyond funny you haven't figured out the name change based on the photos. Oh, right. I know it's you. I know it is you, what's it? Silver Bakaranga-tang. It's just I wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make sure that it was you, mate. Oh, yeah, 2019 finished on the 1st of December. Thanks for reminding me that, yeah. Obviously, with the expansion of the F1 calendar, like, I would not be surprised if, we have races, if the season starts in February one day, like, oh my God, like, I would not be surprised if we end up having races start on February and even, like, start the season on, like, a February the 29th, which, of course, is a day of the year that only happens once every leap year. Once every 4 years, for those of you wondering, because, of course, a leap year only occurs once every 4 years, but... Yeah, I know it was you. I could recognize the photo, but I just wanted to make sure it was 100% silverback orangutan, and I kind of did recognize that name, Michael Arvin, thinking, haven't I seen that name on Chazza HD's channel 3 or 4 years ago? But of course, you've not like been using what I presume is your real name for like quite a few years now on F1 streams. F1 is not on my birthday, but it will be on my dad's birthday in China of all places. Okay, so that's basically like March, April time, because obviously, I mean, every Chinese Grand Prix has taken place since 2009 in like March and April, because that's pretty much like, I don't know, like a time of year the F1 calendar finds fit to like go to that part of the world. Obviously, I know what's it, A1GP 20 odd years ago held a race in like southern China near what's it, where my dad was born in Guangzhou, which funny enough is near Hong Kong, like back in December once, and he had like fairly goodish weather to go racing. And of course, oh, 23rd of March, yeah. Your dad's birthday's pretty close to mine then. Honest to God, like, obviously, Kimi then drove his first race for Alfa Romeo in 2019 on my birthday again in Australia, where he finished 7th. So, I mean, obviously, had he got on the podium that day, I probably would have jumped up and down for joy seeing Kimi get a podium at his first race back at his old team, Sauber. But, yeah, I mean... I think, obviously, yeah, I've got an official announcement. It's been called off. It has been called off. I can't even remember, mate. It's like, dude, I don't really, like, for me, I kind of slowly started checking out of Kimi Räikkönen's career when he went back to Sauber, to be honest, because I knew deep down he wasn't going to ever do anything particularly, like, monumental ever again. Australia will be the season starter next season. Yes, of course. I think I heard that news. That's an interesting one. I think the only reason why they started the season in Bahrain and then made what was it, Saudi the second race of the year, so that they didn't clash with Ramadan apparently. So yes, qualifying postponed, folks. I am not surprised whatsoever. Obviously, my time counter says qualifying will start in 8 minutes, but that's not happening. Absolutely not happening now. I mean, let's face it. Oh. And I would not be surprised if, I don't know, maybe tomorrow we might even have doubts about whether the race will even start. Let's face it. Oh, Bahrain pays a lot of money to be the season starter. Yeah, oh yeah, that lovely oil money. Oh yeah, Kimi making up 10 places on the first lap in the 2020 Portuguese Grand Prix. What a start that was, by the way, folks. Wow, that start, like, and he even overtook Alex Albon that day. And Alex Albon had all sorts of nightmares trying to get past Kimi in the in the greasy conditions at the start, you know, slightly damp track. Yeah, Bahrain will probably be a season opener again whenever Ramadan doesn't clash. I mean, that's why Bahrain and Saudi Arabia get such an early slot in the calendar. And then, of course, we have to wait for the likes of Qatar and Abu Dhabi to end the season. Oh, yeah, 2011, Bahrain got cancelled by the Arab Spring. Yeah, I remember that. And I know Mark Webber came out questioning why on earth do we even have F1 races in Bahrain? Like, why do we even need this race, to be honest? Which is a good question, but of course, you know, Bahrain is always, you know, great to watch in the night light with, you know, the fireworks. The what's it? The you know, all the Viz glow stuff. You know, lighting up the track. Sponsors can like have very good pictures taken of the cars, you know. And the fact that obviously Bahrain is only like 3 or 4 hours ahead of Europe, which makes it very convenient to for American audiences to watch the race. Since of course I think when they have a race at Bahrain, it's like 5 o'clock UK time, it's 6 o'clock European time ish, roughly, or 1 hour before, I can't remember. And then of course in America it's like will start between 9 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock on the East Coast. So, you know, very good timing for F1 audiences, because with Australia, we have to wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to watch the race here in Britain, 6 in the morning in Europe, and then of course, I think everyone in America, well, in America, it's actually 12 o'clock at night on the East Coast, and then it's 9 o'clock on the West Coast. So that's not actually too bad. I think it's just a European, obviously in Europe, we actually absolutely hate that sort of early start, especially in Britain, where, of course, I mean, we have a very, well, there's only like 3 or 4 countries in Europe that share the same time zone with us, which is Iceland, Portugal, Republic of Ireland, and then, of course, a few countries in Africa. Teddy Bear, Tim, and so no race. I guess the organisation is working out hard how to solve the rain delay. Is that your football manager FIFA tournament that went well? Yeah, you got 4th place. Yeah, qualified for the Champions League, just like Arsene Wenger's Arsenal back in the day, always ensuring that you got top 4, or of course the way we've seen the likes of Tottenham regularly rack up top 4 finishes just to keep that Champions League moolah rolling in. Of course, delay qualifying tomorrow. Obviously 3 people voted yes. I mean, let's face it, honestly, when Chas ended his stream, I just decided to come on because I thought we're probably not going to get qualifying started. And even, of course, if we did start, I would be talking about it right now. But, of course, no surprise. I mean, I am seeing rumours of Bottas signing for Audi Sauber next season. I just went back and watched Kimi 2022 Portugal. Oh, my God. Yeah, he was absolutely brilliant that day, wasn't he? I did start the stream off talking off about Christian Horner and how Red Bull have suffered because of the order backlash to Christian Horner, the allegations against Christian Horner, and then, of course, Adrian Newey and Jonathan Wheatley leaving the team. Of course, Adrian Newey has been working on a part-time schedule at Red Bull for the past 2 years, and Christian Horner did promote Pierre Wache as the team's lead designer, but of course, Pierre Wache has really struggled to fill the boots of Adrian Newey, if I'm going to be truly honest. I'm just celebrating Vikings' victory and McLaren's 1-2. Yes, absolutely fantastic. Gotta say it, I know all the Arsenal fans came out crying about losing to Newcastle, but of course I think a lot of their faces then lit up when they saw Bournemouth do them a huge favour a few hours later at, of course, the Vitality Stadium. So, you know, I think Man City fans will, I have to say this, I don't know. Today could be costly for Man City if Arsenal could get their act together in the second half of the year, if we're going to be truly honest. But enough of the Premier League. I mean, I think Kimi's start was a big FU to F1. I am not washed up. I'm just playing nice in the sandbox, making a boatload of money and drinking vodka and all that. Sorry, did I say 6 in the morning? Yeah, I said the Australian Grand Prix starts at like 5 o'clock in the morning in British time, UK time, because they are 11 hours ahead of us. And of course, they start their race at like 4 o'clock afternoon local time for the sake of European and American audiences. Obviously, in Europe, it's a 6 o'clock start, though. So, obviously, everyone is maximizing their audience share. I'm trying to think. Did I watch the? Oh no, I didn't watch the race, the Australian Grand Prix live this year. I think I did watch it live last year, though, when of course we had the monster pile-up in the restart between Sainz, the 2 Alpines, and the 2 Aston Martins, and obviously Alonso and Aston Martin managed to get I'm trying to think, managed to get the race order set to what happened before the first sector. So it was 4 a.m. UK time this year. Okay, so they actually started it a bit earlier. I didn't know that, but I'm trying to think. Wait, I'm trying to think. Was that? Did the race? I think the race took place before, of course, we set the clocks back forward again for daylight saving time. But because, of course, we've now just set the clocks back an hour again last weekend. Of course, I know. I mean, the Australian Grand Prix has become such a mess in recent years. Obviously, because it's lost its place as a season opener, I keep forgetting, what time does the race even start anymore? And, of course, I'm trying to think, what was it? I think don't Australians do daylight saving as well, like we do? Because I think because of World War II, I mean, they started doing daylight saving time or something like that. I have to say, I'm not a big fan of daylight saving time because, the sun sets at 10 o'clock and then the sun rises at 4 a.m. And then, of course, when you set the clock back for winter time, I mean, all of a sudden the day ends a lot earlier. I know they only do it. I mean, obviously, I know they have to do it for farmers and all that sort of stuff, and people who have to work really early in the morning so that they can get the daylight, that they can see some daylight earlier on in the morning. For those who have to get up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work. Postponed to tomorrow morning. Absolutely say yes. That is what I said. Tomorrow morning looks like we're going to get an early start for Sao Paulo, but of course, because Britain and Europe is 3 or 4 hours ahead, that's basically going to be the early afternoon when qualifying starts. So, bit inconvenient because, of course, I was planning to do qualifying and then, of course, get to just sit there, wait for the race and maybe watch a football match or two. Like the early kickoff that we get in the Premier League. I mean, obviously, Derby County lost to Stoke 2-1, so there. Obviously, Derby have just gone back to the Championship, so it's no surprise that we're struggling mid-table. I mean, as long as we avoid relegation, I think that's a good enough job for Derby, since we can't really spend much money due to transfer restrictions. Because, of course, when Derby was relegated to League One, I think Derby were handed a massive 20-point deduction for all sorts of infringement with transfers. Qualifying will 12 p.m. Oh, yeah, but if it's 12 p.m., yeah, but what time does the race start? Is it 4 p.m. UK time? I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, if they're going to start, means it will surely start at 9 o'clock local time in Sao Paulo, which, I mean, that means all the drivers and teams are going to have a very early start tomorrow. And goodness me, a lot of drivers are going to be very tired this weekend. I don't know, where's Kevin? Is Kevin Magnussen available today? No. Oh, right, I think Behrman's doing the whole race weekend, isn't he? So, I mean, I think it looks like Kevin Magnussen has flown back to Europe then, I presume. So, because of course, I am looking at the qualifying track map, timing screen, and it's got Behrman's name in silver. As for Alonso, well, goodness me, he's going to need a good rest for the next 2 weeks because obviously his infection has been causing him all sorts of issues. And truth be told, I mean, let's be honest, with Aston Martin being really slow, I mean, I did speculate in a stream on Thursday or Wednesday that maybe Felipe Drugovich could make his F1 debut, considering the car is not very quick, and Aston Martin are basically all but finishing 5th for the season. And let's be honest, honestly, with Aston Martin probably having the 9th fastest car on the grid, you might as well let Fernando Alonso have a break for the rest of the year. Like, what's the point of he's 43 years old. Oh, Kevin has been ill for the whole week. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, with Fernando Alonso being 43 years old, it's like, dude, he doesn't need to do this now. Like, he's not, I mean, the car is not capable of scoring points unless we see a massive fluke. Although it has to be said, though, in case of we do have a massive fluke before race, where, half the cars retire, this doesn't really speak very highly of Lance Stroll, does it? Because, surely a driver who is experienced should surely be able to bank points in a fluke race where there's, a chance to finish 5th or 6th place. If they can't rely upon Lance Stroll to get a result like that, if someone like Alonso was to DNF or was to sit out a race because of illness, then, I mean, that really doesn't speak volumes of him very highly, does it? I know Stroll finished 11th in Mexico, but you've got to realise, I think there was a lot of cars getting into trouble late on in that race in Mexico. But you have to realise, though, I am basing Aston Martin off their sprint quality and sprint race performance, and it does not look good, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, I know some say they gave up on this weekend, but if they have really given up, then why the hell is Fernando Alonso even in the car then? Because I know some people believe that Alonso's real reason for retiring from Mexico was because of his infection, but of course, from my sources, it was a cooling problem with the car. So, but I'm just saying, Aston Martin have got P5 wrapped up in the constructors. It's you have to ask yourself, is Fernando Alonso required to do all four of the last races if he is feeling ill? And we've got a 2-week break. If he was to do the race tomorrow and it made his infection worse, you could potentially risk then losing Alonso for the last 3 races. So surely you'd be better off having Alonso fit for the final 3 races than, I don't know, just risk then forcing Alonso to do a full race distance where Aston Martin have just got a really slow car. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, I mean, you agree with me then, say, because, honestly, that's because I presume you will agree with me, because let's be honest, the Aston Martin has really fallen off in the last few races, and I mean, they're basically waiting for Adrian Newey to arrive at the team. I know we had a massive debate about Christian Horner on Chaz's stream. This was a really tricky one for me, because at first I thought that there were a bunch of phony allegations being made against Horner, because I thought, was it someone wants to get rid of Christian Horner at Red Bull? But with the way Wheatley and Newey have left the team since, it does feel like Christian Horner has kind of lost his way. And I know obviously every team can only dominate for 4 or 5 years when given the opportunity, like we see with McLaren, Williams, Lotus, Red Bull, Ferrari, and of course, I mean, I know Mercedes dominated for but what's it, 7 years straight. I mean, that was like biblically long, their domination of F1 between 2014 and 2020. But I mean, it was always going to be the case that with the cost cap regulations, that Red Bull were always going to eventually see their dominance end after about 4 or 5 years at most. So, and Christian Horner has arguably taken Red Bull as far as he can, and great job getting Adrian Newey to come to the team. Great job, like, getting the likes of Vettel and Verstappen promoted to the team, signing Webber and Ricciardo as their number 2 drivers over the years. But Horner's is the owner's, quote-unquote, their adopted son. Oh, yeah, I know, because the Thai owners are obviously heavily in favour of Christian Horner. But the question I have to ask is that, do the shareholders from Thailand, do they have like any like extensive day-to-day involvement with the team in Europe? Like, because if they don't, then all I can say is that they don't get to see everything that goes on in the European headquarters at Red Bull, and especially in the factory at Milton Keynes, where of course Horner has to like be there to like do meetings and all that. And I'm not sure how informed the Thai shareholders really are with the Red Bull operation at this moment in time. He's only staying at the team because obviously the Thai shareholders insist that he remains as team principal. I mean, the problem is, though, Christian Horner's now been team principal for 20 years. Like, now, I know because he became team principal at the age of just 32, it seems like he's not been a team principal for that long, but he has only just entered his 50s. So, like, I think a lot of people, like, because obviously he's not aged that much over the years, like, he still has very few grey hairs or any wrinkles, and he is still in very good condition for, like, a 51-year-old man. What happened to qualifying? Qualifying is delayed until tomorrow, my friend. We have had a massive outpour of rain. Salad, I apologise that I cannot give you any coverage about qualifying. If you're wondering what happened with the sprint race, Lando Norris won the sprint ahead of teammate Oscar Piastri thanks to team orders, with Max Verstappen taking Charles Leclerc taking 3rd place after a penalty was handed to Max Verstappen for breaching virtual safety car rules. I apologise that I cannot give you any coverage about qualifying today because of the huge amount of rain that has hit the track, which means that qualifying will take place tomorrow. And of course, I am not sure whether we might even whether official qualifying will actually take place. So, yeah, I mean, look, the problem with your argument is that you're arguing that loyalty pays dividends, but the thing is, though, like, Frank Williams built Williams up from the late 70s until the late 90s. I mean, they were one of the top teams in F1 for nearly 2 decades. But when he lost Adrian Newey to McLaren, lost factory Renault engines, and then, of course, lost the factory BMW deal, after 2005, Williams were absolutely toast. Like, after 25 years at the top, they just fell off completely and got stuck in the lower midfield. And then, of course, McLaren, Ron Dennis, took over the team in 1981 with the Project 4 company. Kept McLaren, won World Championships with McLaren between 1984 to about 2008, where, of course, championships with Niki Lauda, Prost, Senna, Hakkinen, and, of course, Lewis Hamilton, and plenty of Constructors' Championships. But when Ron Dennis made the move to go from a customer Mercedes engine to Honda engines, which was a full factory deal for 2015, the wheels came rolling off the bus, and then a year later in 2016, Ron Dennis departed the company, and of course, in 2017, they named the chassis the McLaren MCL 32, which of course meant that Ron Dennis's involvement in the team was completely banished. And of course, funnily enough, ever since McLaren have gone back to Mercedes engines for 2021, they have crept themselves back into contention again. So, you know, it proves that every, like, I know Looney Classic says, oh, there's plenty of great great engineers, yeah, and very few great leaders, which, yeah, is true. But the problem is, leaders do have their, do decline themselves. Yeah, Patrick Head, also another, like, reason why Williams went backwards, of course, being too stubborn and pig-headed in his involvement in the team. I think, obviously, he was forced to stand down from, like, not stand down, but, like, take a lower position within the engineering department from, like, 2005 onwards. Like, obviously, his involvement caused BMW to leave the team. He was also a very difficult person to work with, because I know, when Frank Williams had his accident that left him in a wheelchair, Keke Rosberg said that he timed his departure from Williams to the perfection, because, of course, he basically hinted at the fact that had he been forced to work with Patrick Head as a stand-in team principal, then they probably would have had a massive fight in the circumstances. Because, of course, I think when Frank Williams had his accident in 1986, obviously, Patrick Head stood in as team principal for the first half of the season since, I mean, obviously, Patrick Head had, like, I don't know, 30 to 40% shares in the Williams Grand Prix engineering team at the time. And he was pretty much like, you know, Frank Williams' right-hand man. Oh, yeah, Sam Michael also fell out with Patrick Head. Yeah, obviously, that was, I mean, Patrick Head, very much my way or the highway type of character in his time in F1. I think Patrick Head eventually left F1 around, like, 2010, 11-ish. I think eventually, like, when he got too old, I think he just decided to part ways with Frank Williams. I mean, Frank Williams obviously eventually handed the team over to his daughter Claire. I mean, obviously, the problem with Williams is that they spent far too long trying to keep holding their independent status. I mean, and it was only in 2020 when Dorrington Capital bought the team that they finally smelt the coffee and realised that their time as an independent outfit had to come to an end, because, I mean, for the past 3 years by that point, they had pretty much finished rock bottom of the championships table. So, and of course, 2020 was also the first year in Williams' history as a full constructors in F1 that they finished the season with 0 points to their name. I don't know whether it was what happened in their top when Frank Williams used to run his older team, another team, which was also had Williams in their names, but it was officially called Frank Williams Cars Racing. I mean, I think they finished in the championship with 0 points quite a few times, but of course eventually he liquidated that team and then started a new team called Williams Grand Prix Engineering with Patrick Head involved as, like, technical director and, of course, deputy team principal, where they had far more success. And, you know, back to my point, yeah, Christian Horner has been team principal for Red Bull for 20 years, and he's had a ridiculous amount of success, but every great leader does have to call it a day. And thing is, like, Adrian Newey is a very rare example of an exceptional engineer who's just been like, survived all sorts of rule changes and has remained an invaluable chief designer all the way back from, like, the early 1990s, when, of course, he was designing Nigel Mansell's Williams Renault FW14B, which, of course, allowed Mansell to become the first driver to win 9 races in a championship season. Then he went and designed the FW40. 1993, he designed Alan Prost's Williams FW15C, which also allowed Alan Prost to storm to the championship that year. Okay, maybe not as dominantly, but of course, Prost won 7 races. David Hill, a rookie, won 3 races. So, of course, I mean... And, of course, you have to remember, it was the year when, of course, Ayrton Senna won 5 races in a Ford Cosworth V8-powered McLaren. So, like, thanks to Adrian Newey, Alan Prost was actually able to win the championship with 2 races to go, despite Ayrton Senna being on absolute top form that year. I mean, there is some truth that Adrian Newey wanted a new challenge, but I mean, the thing is that, I mean, Jonathan Wheatley also left Red Bull because, of course, I know obviously there's the opportunity to be a team principal at Audi Sauber, just like James Vowles is a team principal at Williams, but I think a lot of people are, like, fed up of what the working conditions are like at Red Bull. Oh, right, yeah, the team was given to Wolf Racing, yeah, I forgot, and of course Wolf did screw Frank over. How could I forget? Oh, yeah, it was supposed to be like a joint partnership between Walter Wolf and Frank Williams, but of course Walter Wolf wanted to make his own team, so yeah, I mean, obviously, I know the statistics make it look like, what's it, Wolf won their first ever race with Jody Scheckter at the 1977, I don't know, was it Brazilian, Argentinian, or South African Grand Prix, but of course, I think it is much forgotten that, obviously, Wolf actually completely took over the team and basically forced Frank to start all over again by himself, so... Can you see my messages now, Rooks? Yes, I can see your messages, Rooksford. I hope you're doing absolutely well now. Qualifying has been postponed to no one's surprise, if we're going to be honest. I did just spend the last 50-odd minutes talking about Christian Horner, Frank Williams, Ron Dennis, and, like, how great leaders come and go. Hell! Colin Chapman... was winning championships with Jim Clark in 1963, kept winning until 1978 with Mario Andretti. Of course, was really unfortunate to witness the demise of drivers like Jochen Rindt and, of course, Ronnie Peterson at the Italian Grand Prix. Funnily enough, Monza being a real problem track for Lotus. Of course, the team, due to their loyalty to Ford Cosworth, meant that they always had to trim their cars out, which made their cars so unstable on the straights and meant their cars were more liable to getting involved in accidents. Salah, oh my God, Mohamed Salah, like, my God, he's basically closing. He's almost as much as a legend at Anfield, like John Barnes and Steven Gerrard at this point in his career yet. Well done, absolutely well done. He's overtaken Steven Gerrard. That is mental. I never thought Steven Gerrard would get overtaken as Liverpool's all-time Prem top goal scorer. F1 are now backtracking on whether FP1 will set the grid and say they're not sure whether the session will set the grid. My God, yeah, but the thing is, we've just had a spring qualifying session. Like, that's far more representative of what FP1 was. Because, come on, like, is everyone really gonna push an FP1 the first practice session of the weekend? Like, no, of course they're not. It's the first practice session of the weekend. No one pushes that hard in the first practice session because you don't know what conditions the track is in. You know, you could always make a mistake and crash a car off and write your machinery off before you've collected any real information. Oh, right, you just saw the regulations on the F1 website. I think that's a stupid rule. Like, surely it should be FP2 should set the well, I know we've not had FP2 this weekend, but that's really dodgy by F1. Like, I think I would change the rules in that for a normal race weekend, FP2 should set the qualifying session or any practice session that had no rain in it, like FP1 or FP3, if they can't use FP2 if that was a rain interrupted session. But on a sprint weekend, they should 100% use the sprint qualifying session as the official feature race qualifying order if they cannot do the feature race qualifying session. I know people might be confused by me using the term feature race, but I mean the main race is basically the feature race, a full 71 laps. Like the thing is, everyone is pushing more or less to the limit in sprint, unlike FP1. Because I mean, the only way you could make the FP1 argument make sense if there was evidence to show that everyone does push the limit in FP1, which I absolutely disagree with. Because with sprint qualifying, you are pushing your car to the limit to get the best grid position for a sprint race where you can be rewarded with points. Of course, Brazil is the 5th largest country in the world and a well-known rainforest. Yeah, of course, there are problems with that. I mean, I do understand why F1 has sprint weekends. It's because they have to, the paying fans at the track want to see a bit of action. And, when obviously there's no F2 race or no F3 races on the support schedule, I mean, they have to offer sprint races. And, of course, on a weekend like this, where, of course, we've had loads of rain delays, I think at least we can say we've actually had a little bit of racing going on, even if it's only 33% race distance. Hello there, Mark Mima. Cannot pronounce your name, I'm sorry. F1 has become a joke. I can't believe they can't even bring a car out on the track. You should have a word with Pirelli and, of course, the FIA regulators for designing cars that produce far too much spray in the wet. And, of course, with these 2-meter wide cars, I mean, they do produce a lot of blinding spray in the wet, which is a huge problem now. But, of course, the design of the Pirelli full wet tyres is also hugely problematic because the drivers have been complaining about these Pirelli wet tyres for basically almost 14 years they've been here in the sport. I think the first year we had Pirelli wet tyres, obviously the Canadian Grand Prix had 2 red flags in it. In a race that I think would have been a fairly normal race in previous gone past before 2011. But of course, the problem with Formula 1 is that we all stuck with Pirelli supplying tyres year after year because the likes of Michelin and Bridgestone refused to come back because F1 insists on the tyre manufacturers to give us tyres that artificially degrade in an unnatural manner just for the sake of producing wacky races and try and give us a bit of strategy. Because I think the problem with Bridgestone is that their tyres were too durable when they decided to ban refueling back in 2010. And of course, what was it? 2010 was the first year when we had a refueling ban. I think the only way you can bring back Bridgestone and Michelin if you were to reintroduce refueling, to be honest, because of course I think before 2010, I think refueling was a huge tactical element in F1 races, but the problem we also have is that the fact that these hybrid engines are so good at saving fuel, and the fact that unlike the older naturally aspirated engines which used about at least almost 150 kilos worth of fuel during a race, I mean these hybrid engines only use about just under 110 kilograms. So unfortunately, I'm not sure how much of a tactical element refueling would be, since of course refueling stops would probably only last 4 or 5 seconds nowadays if they were to return, and I think 5 or 6 seconds, because obviously you wouldn't need to put that much fuel in the car in order to get the car to the finish of the race. I've always been a massive fan of Interlagos. Yeah, I do like Interlagos because it's lots of flat out acceleration zones from turn 13 all the way down to the start finish straight, and then of course you got another flat out bit from coming out of turn 3 into turn 4, and then of course you got the run up to the hill from turn 4 all the way up to turn 6, and then you got that short wiggly bit that comes afterwards. As you can see over here, you can see the track map. It's a very nice track, isn't it? like, it's fun to do on sim racing and video games, I'll tell you that. I mean, it's my favorite track to drive on, like, a video game because, like, Austria's another one I always like because there's obviously a very short lap time. You don't have to learn too many corners. There's only, like, I know it says there's 15 corners, but of course, 13, 14, and 15 are not really corners at all. And then, of course, you have to realize how many braking zones is there. There's the one right there at turn 1. Turn 4 is the second braking zone. I think some cars might brake for turn 6, but I think some just lean off the gas. I mean, you could say that turn 8 is the third proper braking zone. A bit of braking required for turn 9, so that's 4. And then, of course, you have to brake for turn 10, so that's... And then, of course, turn 12, that's 7 braking zones, to be honest. I'm trying to think of how many braking zones there are. Austria, I think you've got, like, I think there's only like 6 or 7 braking zones at Austria as well, which makes that track quite easy to drive as well. I mean, Austria has only like 9 official corners, and only 7 of them at most are actual braking zones. I mean, I'm trying to think, what other tracks are really short and quick and don't need like a lot of, I don't know, a lot that aren't very technical and just very quick to drive around. I mean, Interlagos, the Red Bull Ring in Austria. I think Silverstone's quite fun to drive because, okay, I know there's more. Okay, I know that's a much longer track, but you know, Monza's also a fun one to drive because you've only got to do the 3 chicades, and of course you've got the Lesmos, which is like, I don't know, 5 braking zones, and then of course you got to run down to the Parabolica. So Monza's only got about like, I don't know, 6 braking zones for what is a 3-mile track. Zandvoort's I've never driven Zandvoort, by the way, like, because obviously I've not driven any F1 games for a long time now, but I can't remember, like, did I play Zandvoort on an older race driver touring car game once, like 20 years ago? I think I really hated that track because it's just so tight and windy. I suppose if you're very good at, like, tight technical tracks, then yeah, you'll probably enjoy Zandvoort, but there's very few overtaking opportunities at that track, to be honest, apart from the run down to turn 1. What was it? Monza, Silverstone, Red Bull Ring, Interlagos, as you can see on the screen. Have got to be 4 of my favourite tracks I've driven on. I used to actually like to drive around Melbourne. Although, of course, Melbourne is, well, I'm trying to think now. There's like 6. I don't know. There's like 10 braking zones in Australia, though, I think. Oh yeah, it's like Hungary, but with banking. You are right there, but to be honest, I would actually rather drive Hungary. But the problem with Hungary is that Hungary's quite slow, and of course, it's a lot more technical than all the other tracks I've just mentioned. Monaco has always been a nightmare for me because obviously the barriers are so close to the track. I think any circuit where the barriers are so close to the track is always something I hate, like Monaco, Singapore. I've never driven Baku, but of course Baku looks boring as hell, to be honest. I mean, Monaco and Singapore and Zandvoort are 3 of my least favourite tracks. I mean, Hungary's all right-ish, but it's not like a all-time favourite with me. Maybe, I don't know, Kota. I've driven a bit of Kota. Suzuka can be a bit difficult. I agree with you there, John. I mean, Monaco, Singapore, Baku are really not my favourite tracks. I've never driven, like, the newest tracks, though, like Jeddah. I have no idea what Jeddah's like, but I suppose I would actually enjoy Jeddah if I had to try one day, but I don't know whether I'll get. I don't really care about getting any F1 games these days. I hated the hotel hairpin at Monaco. That's an interesting one. Like, how can you have problems with that part of the track? Like, I mean, for me, it was like an easy part of the track because you would just slow down to like, I don't know, 30 miles an hour for the tightest part of the track. And it's like, you can't really do anything else other than go around it slowly. You can't really gain time around the hotel hairpin at Monaco. I mean, I think the thing that what probably makes people like Monaco is the fact that obviously at Monaco you get full downforce, you get the gear shortened to like the shortest gear ratio, and of course with modern F1 cars they're not allowed to do that anymore. You get fairly soft spring settings for the suspension, maybe. I don't know. The car's made as soft as possible, you know, full steering lock. Yes, how can I forget the full steering lock comes in so you can go through the hairpin and the tight corners. I mean, I prefer the faster tracks like Interlagos, the Red Bull Ring in Austria, Monza, Silverstone, because you can just go flat out and it's not like you have to think too much about going around the corners. And then you get a track like Montreal Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, which is a bit of a mixed bag with me because, you know, it is a very nice track to drive, but of course, it's quite low grip. I don't know what, and of course, the barriers are a little bit close. Spa's a really hard one for me to crack. Like, I like Spa, but of course, it can be a little bit technical in certain parts, especially in the second sector, and especially around parts like Pouon and the be going through the corners to enter sector 3 can be a bit difficult. But yeah, I think Interlagos has got to be my favorite track because it's actually so easy to learn compared to anything else. I know was it when I used to play F1 2002, like they always did driving school lessons at Monza first because it was like the easiest track to learn on the calendar by some margin. And it is still to this day, but like, and there's like no camber changes. It's just a mostly flat track, apart from obviously the run up to the Ascari chicane where there's a hill going up. But apart from that, it's like, even then, the slope is quite gentle going up to Ascari. And then, of course, it's just back to being flat again afterwards. Sapang, I think the problem with Sapang is that the lap time was just too long for me, and it's just like some of the corners are a bit too technical, like halfway through the track. Like I was never a fan of Sapang. Like, although I will say the Shanghai circuit is even more technical than Sapang. Like, I think a lot of the Herbert Tilke tracks are not my favorite due to just how technical they can be, and it's like you often try to like make the circuits like into a certain shape to represent some sort of local symbol, but it's like it just to drive a car like in the sort of shape that Sapang and Shanghai had was just wasn't exactly super fun to me. That's all I'm gonna try and say. Um, I know the old version of the Nürburgring, which I mean, okay, the original not trying to think was it the original layout at the old not original layout the layout Nürburgring had between 1984 to about 2001, where like the circuit would start off with the chicane, and then of course it's just like a loop that goes on for like 3 miles, and you can complete the lap within like less than 1 minute 15 seconds. I used to find it fun on like a really old F1 video game on like F1 1998 or maybe F1 2000. And then he did the changes to the first corner where like, I don't know, you have to go through the stadium section, which sort of slowed the cars down. I am probably one of the very few people who preferred the newer version of Hockenheim with the new stadium section over the older version of Hockenheim, where like you had to go through 4 straights over a 4-mile layout, and then, of course, the stadium section before the start-finish straight was so hard to drive around because, of course, with the reduced downforce, like, your car is just skidding around through, like, the final few corners, and you're having to drive around those corners slower than you usually would with a medium downforce setup. I mean, I will say the newer version of Ocon with more downforce makes it a lot more easier to drive because, of course, you don't have, I mean, apart from the start-finish straight and, of course, the long acceleration so down to the hairpin, it makes it a bit more enjoyable to have some actual grip in a car. Anting, I'm not sure what Anting is. Is that Anting? I've never heard of a track called Anting. Is there a track called Anting? Never heard of it. I don't know where you're referring to be honest. I mean, the problem with modern F1 tracks is oh, right, and Shanghai, is that? I don't know. I never heard of Anting being used as a name for Shanghai. I don't know. I suppose I don't know what some sim. I know sim racers have like their own weird names for like certain tracks and terminology. Hockenheim in 1989 500cc MotoGP is the best. Oh yeah, I know there's also a really like short layout of Hockenheim, which is only like 1.5 miles long, which I used to race on the race driver touring course game when was it when you went to the DTM and like you raced around a 1.5 mile circuit layout. Yeah, I think you could complete the lap within about 55 seconds, and it was always quite fun because I would always deliberately cut out half of the track through like going across the grass, and it would just save me like 6 or 7 seconds. And because there was no driving penalty system and the old race Toka race driver game from back in 2001, it meant I always won the race, which is just, yeah, absolutely childish. But hey, that's probably why I mean, the 1.5 mile circuit layout, I mean, it was always fun to cheat across that track, but it was like, I would do the same thing as I would do on like Colin McRae Rally, where I would just deliberately cheat across certain corners and gain a huge amount of time. Baku, yeah, I've already mentioned Baku. I mean, I've never driven Baku, but I can just tell from like watching F1 race coverage that I would despise like having to wait for hours on end for the straights to end around Baku. And then I think the weirdest thing with Baku is that once you go past the start finish straight, then you have to prepare very quickly to brake for the first corner because they have placed the start finish line really late on the straight at Baku, which makes it seem really weird because most tracks are really, I mean, most tracks in F1 is like the start finish straight has a fair amount of distance between itself and the first braking zone for turn 1, but at Baku it's really close to the braking zone for turn 1, which makes it so weird. Who doesn't like a bit of cheating? Yeah, well, I mean, especially when you're a kid, like, you don't know how to, like, drive a racetrack, not when you're, like, 10 years old. Yeah, you'll do a lot of cheating, but obviously it gets a bit, I mean, obviously then you just sit there and think, what the heck? I'm not actually improving my driving skills now, am I? Yeah. I'm trying to think of other tracks. I never enjoyed driving Imola, by the way. Like, I always found Imola to be a bit of a hassle to learn. Magny-Cours in France, the older French Grand Prix track was. I actually found that track to be quite fun because you could carry loads of speed into turn 1, then gradually brake into turn 2, and then you have the massive bit. Of course, you have to make sure that you get yourself into a good exit so that you can carry loads of speed going to the hairpin. And then you got the fast chicanes that come after that. It was actually quite fun, but it could be, you could lose a lot of time if you made a mistake. I mean, of course, they replaced it with Paul Ricard, which another Herbert. I mean, I know it's a really old track from like the 1960s, but I think the changes that Herbert Tilke did to the track just, yeah, nah. I mean, just it looks like looking at like blue lines everywhere. I mean, the only way you can have an exciting race of Baku is just for cars to crash, and I think the same could be said for Paul Ricard. It's just not very interesting. I think I did used to drive on the Yeonnam track at South Korea. I just sort of call it South Korea because I can't pronounce Yeonnam to save my life, so I keep forgetting what it was like to drive on that track. I think it was just a bit, I don't know, a bit stop-starty. And then, of course, you had the Bud track in India, which, oh my God, another Herbert Tilke track. I mean, I did have a habit of getting some of the fast corners wrong on that track. I mean, obviously, India was forced to leave the F1 calendar after, what was it? The Indian government declared Formula One to be a source of entertainment rather than actual sport. So obviously, after 2013, after Vettel kept winning there all the time, they were forced to pull their race from the calendar. If I'm going to be honest, I would actually prefer to watch a race at Korea and India again over what we have in the Middle East, because I think, honestly, I think a lot of the races in the Middle East are not that fun to watch. But because we have Liberty Media in charge of F1 now, obviously, I mean, they don't watch it because of they want to attract American viewers to F1. Those two tracks, along with the fact that the organisers are not willing to pay the humongous fees to pay for an F1 race, mean that Korea and India are no longer viable for the F1 calendar. I mean, obviously, I've never driven on Las Vegas. I think that might be, I know some people have driven it, but of course that's relatively new. And Miami, they both look absolutely terrible to me. Coulter's a mixed bag, like, can provide good racing, but for me, I always had a problem with that track, probably because I'm not good enough. To be honest, I think Coulter's a track where I really began to realise I wasn't that good at playing sim racing, to be honest. Even though I actually enjoyed it, but it's like I was always losing time here and there and everywhere. What else is there? Suzuka, I don't know. I keep forgetting. I used to struggle with Suzuka so much when I was really little. I got better at Suzuka, but I don't know. Oh yeah, I remember driving on the old Indianapolis F1 track. Yep, I mean, it's more likely F1 will host more races in North America again. Like, I know you keep getting like people on X or Twitter campaigning to have a race back in South Africa, but there's not enough of a consumer market in Africa to make a race there viable, because I mean, obviously, people in Africa just don't have the money or the disposable income to go and visit races in F1. And of course, Africa as a continent has only ever had two countries host a race there, which of course it's South Africa and the other one being Morocco back in 1958. But I mean, the thing with obviously in Africa is that because F1 has always had a habit of like ignoring most of the African continent, I mean, obviously they're all African F1 fans, but like, if you don't get a chance to like have an F1 race up close and personal to you, then and if you don't have like a much of a local motorsport scene nearby, then especially if your country can't really afford to have like amateur race drivers here, there, and everywhere, then I mean, most of the country's not going to be interested in motor racing. And a problem is with other countries that everyone's tried to crack, like I think China in particular, is that to this day most people in China live in rural villages, and you have to realize, like, even when they've tried to make Chinese people interested in football and even basketball, despite the rise of Yao Ming and Jeremy Ling in basketball, they still can't get a lot of Chinese people to turn up to, like, I don't know, to those football games or basketball events. So it's like, I mean, for 20 years, China, everyone's been trying to crack China, but they've just given up because I just don't think that the mainland Chinese have like a tradition of being enthusiastic about attending sports events on a regular basis like you do in Europe and North America, South America and Australia. And then, of course, you got the Middle East where, of course, everything is really closely packed together. So obviously, like, the traveling distances to get to somewhere like the Qatar racetrack, Jeddah and Baku and all that is actually a really short traveling distance all over the place. Because, I mean, everything's a lot more crammed in the Middle East. And, of course, the traveling distance for, like, people from Europe to go to the Middle East is pretty short. Baku is absolute garbage. I absolutely hate Baku. I mean, for me, Austria, the Red Bull Ring, and Interlagos have got to be my two favourite tracks, with Silverstone a close third place because they're just three tracks I found really easy to learn and drive on. They're basically the closest thing to like Mario Kart tracks for me, without like the bananas or any like gutter oil being spattered on the track or any like anything annoying. There has to be a track or two for those people. Yeah, well, I know obviously occasionally we all like to indulge in wacky races here and there, but the problem with Baku is that the only way to make it interesting is for someone to constantly mess up, like Grosjean or Ricciardo hitting Verstappen, or I don't know, the two Force Indias of Perez and Ocon crashing into each other in 2017, and of course, the debris from their cars then went and damaged Kimi's car, which made me angry. And then, of course, it led to the famous "give me my gloves" steering wheel incident. Then you have, I don't know, have we had? And then, of course, 2021 saw Verstappen have his tyre blowout. And then, of course, a certain Sir Lewis Hamilton proudly announcing on the radio that it's a marathon, not a sprint, before the restart. And then he goes and overshoots turn one on the restart. I couldn't believe what I heard. I thought, oh my God, he's going to screw up the restart, isn't he, by saying that? And I was correct. I just thought, I think Lewis said those words to try and calm himself down, trying to remind himself that he doesn't need to, like, attempt any fancy overtaking maneuvers at a restart. And then he goes and overshoots turn one when he saw a gap, without realising that there was no need for him to go for a gap because Max was already retired. Moaning Yorkshireman is still angry about Baku 2017. Oh my God, Perez and Ocon, what a driving partnership that was. Absolute bulk. Those two, I'm amazed that those two didn't get put in like a mental asylum with like being put into those restraining jackets to stop them from trying to strangle each other. Honestly, that was just an absolutely that was like a angry teammate partnership that was on the verge of going haywire. Like, I mean, I've not seen a partnership like that ever since, really. With probably the closest we've seen to something like that is probably Hamilton and Alonso, and of course Hamilton and Rosberg. I wonder how Hamilton and Leclerc will get on next year because, of course, I mean, I can't imagine Hamilton wanting to be like a Hamilton wanting. What was I going to say? I mean, Hamilton's going to be teammates with Leclerc next year, so there could be fireworks there. Like, I can't imagine Hamilton tolerating a number 2 role to Leclerc next year. I will still metaphorically beat you to DEATH when it comes to China winning against Indonesia because I predicted it incorrectly. Well, you got to realise if you actually watch the game between China and Indonesia, I mean, even against one of the worst teams in the group, China still spent most of the game sitting back, defending, had less than 40% of possession of the ball. I mean, obviously, Branco's team game plan of like trying to destroy Indonesia on the counter attack did work perfectly, but I have to say, I mean, Indonesia's defending was quite naive, to be honest, and I think they did get a bit too carried away in terms of maximizing possession of the ball when they probably should have tried to like sit back and try and like invite China to like try and press them over the pitch and then try and hit China on the counter attack. But I suppose Xing Tae-yong got his tactics wrong that day. But of course, you know, you look at the group and there's like 10 points for Japan, but then everyone else, Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Bahrain have 5 points, and both Indonesia and China have 3 points. So it's all to play for still. Like, it's not a disaster yet for anyone in that group, amazingly enough. There's always usually lots of good races in Austria. Yeah, I think Austria has been like, ever since its return back to F1 in 2014, has easily been like the best pound for pound race on the calendar for quite a few years now. Like, it's easily got to be one of my favorite tracks on the calendar for that reason. Not only is it fun to drive on in a video game, but you can tell the drivers, it's like always a place you can get a lot of slipstream. It's not too technical. Like, you don't need like a super precise setup to get to really maximize your car around that track. And of course, it is a place where, because you've got lots of runners areas and good overtaking opportunities, you're always going to see drivers try and go past each other all the time. I mean, it's no surprise that not only in 2020, but also in 2021, that F1 decided to hold a double race there because, of course, the amount of wheel-to-wheel action you can get, obviously. It was interesting to see the first race be held behind closed doors, and then, of course, the second race, you saw fans being invited back into the paddock, into the grandstand, I beg your pardon. But of course, we have to remember Indonesia have a team that has basically got an average age of like 23 years old. So, of course, they're not, I mean, their lack of experience did definitely cost them when they visited Beijing. And of course, you had all the Chinese fans like chanting stuff again, like probably booing the Indonesian players every time they touched the ball. So, yeah. Oh, well, I mean, there's still another 6 games to go in the Asian zone for World Cup qualifying. I don't know why I'm talking about football, but I've got to say it. Like, I know people hate international football in Europe, but, like, when you watch international football and their qualifying matches around the world, like Asia, Africa, South America, like, the excitement level actually goes up to quite a decent level, despite the fairly questionable standard of football being played there. Whilst I think in Europe, obviously, everyone knows each other too well. Of course, the standard of football is much higher. Everyone is like, everyone just sits back and defends a lot. So obviously, unfortunately, since of course we get spoiled by like the UEFA Champions League, the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, Europa League, and even like a few big games in the Eredivisie, Portugal and France, and even Belgium. Like, I mean, club football provides a lot of top quality action. So unfortunately, international football, especially when you have to play against the smaller nations like the Faroe Islands and Lithuania, it very much becomes like, it feels like watching a game from like the Championship or League One in terms of magnitude. They played in Qingdao. I can't remember, mate. I don't even care, to be honest. Beijing, Qingdao, dude, there's always going to be like a huge like turnout for Chinese football matches, despite the fact their team is probably This is probably the worst Chinese team that's probably been around since like the late 1980s, to be honest, at this point. Like, I mean, funnily enough, I think when China qualified for the 1988 Olympics, that was when their team started to slowly get back in order again. But of course, China have only ever qualified for one World Cup in 2002. And that's because, of course, Japan and Korea were automatic qualifiers due to hosting the tournament. So, yeah, bit of an asterisk next to China's name when you talk about them qualifying for 2002, even though, yeah, they got the job done and then they got destroyed by Turkey, Brazil, and Costa Rica in the actual tournament itself. Conceded 9 goals and scored 0 goals. Like, even though that was probably like one of the best Chinese teams ever, it was still quite a long way off. Even like the average teams in world football, like Turkey and Costa Rica, which is pretty sad, but hey. Brazil, obviously, we all know how good Brazil are at football, so we don't need to talk about that. Despite obviously having Vinicius Junior Stroll in the Brazil shirt, but F1 terms, like best pound for pound nation is easily got to be Finland. I think 9 drivers, 7 of them have scored points with no, 7 of them have actually finished on the podium with Mika Salo and JJ Leto. I mean, JJ Leto got a podium at the 1991 San Marino Grand Prix with Delara. Mika Salo got a podium at the 1999 Hockenheim Grand Prix for Ferrari. I think he also got a podium at Monza later that year in front of the Tifosi. 5 race winners out of those 9 drivers. Or what's it? Valtteri Bottas winning 10 times for Mercedes, and Heikki Kovalainen winning his only race at the 2008 Hungarian Grand Prix after Felipe Massa retired with 3 laps to go with an engine failure. Then, of course, we have, what was it? 3 world champions. Keke Rosberg becoming the first Finnish champion in 1982. Winning the championship at Las Vegas at the old Caesars Palace track. Mika Häkkinen winning twice in 1998 for McLaren and 1999, although, of course, in 1999 he was a beneficiary of an injury to Michael Schumacher in a season where he only won 5 races, and, of course, he suffered mechanical spin-offs and crashes at Imola, Hockenheim, and Monza, but despite that, he still managed to win the championship by just 2 points ahead of Eddie Irvine, who managed to win 4 races and had probably the season of his life, to be honest, despite failing to score a single pole position. Then, of course, we have the one and only Kimi Matthias Raikkonen, who was the replacement for Mika Häkkinen at McLaren from 2002 onwards. Despite driving brilliantly well during 2003 and 2005, he failed to win a championship with McLaren Mercedes because of endless mechanical failures, which I think affected at least 30% of his races at McLaren. And, of course, he also had further grid drops throughout, like 2005, affecting his races at France, Britain, and Monza, as well, of course, retiring from the lead at Imola and Nürburgring that year. He also had a grid drop at Suzuka, but then he, of course, won from P17 on the grid. Then, of course, he went to Ferrari and won the World Championship. But, of course, as we all know, Ferrari was really, in reality, the beginning of the downfall of Kimi Raikkonen. So that's, for Finland, that is 9 drivers who tried to enter an F1 race. I forgot about the 2 other drivers who never scored a point. I don't even care about them. 7 drivers scoring points and podiums, which is, of course, JJ Leto at the 1991 San Marino Grand Prix for Delara, Mika Salo for Ferrari at 1999 Germany Hockenheim, and, of course, the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. 5 drivers winning a race, with Valtteri Bottas doing 10 times for Mercedes during the years, and, of course, Heikki Kovalainen winning once for McLaren at the 2008 Hungarian Grand Prix after Felipe Massa's engine failure, 3 laps to go. And 3 world champions with Keke Rosberg, winning 1982 in a year where he only managed to win one race for Williams after, of course, the departure of Alan Jones and Carlos Reutemann, but he would go on to win 5 career races in his career for Williams. Then, of course, Kimi Räikkönen then became Finland's third and most recent world champion in 2007, of course. Finland also have countless number of world rally champions with Juha Kankkunen, Markku Alén, I think, Tommi Mäkinen, Marcus Gronholm. I don't even know. Oh yeah, that Timo Salonen guy, can't remember his name. And they nearly had Henry Toivonen to become a champion, but of course he was tragically deleted at the French Rally Tour de Corse in 1986, driving that dual turbocharged / supercharged Lancia Delta, which was an absolutely scary as hell Group B rally car, which had like 600 brake horsepower or something bonkers like that. Okay, I'm going to get to your comments now. So I've just finished reading a listing of all the Finland's F1 success. International football can come down to individual brilliance for a lot of times for that reason. Well, if that's the case, then, I mean, why on earth did Austria go out of their way to employ Ralf Rangnick as a manager? And why is it that the English FA have gone out of their way to get Thomas Tuchel as a manager? Because, of course, two very good club managers going into international football. And, of course, we've had Hansi Flick try his best for Germany. And, of course, Luis Enrique try and get the job for Spain. But, of course, I think their inability to like adapt to international football did obviously cause them problems, since of course international football is what I would call get it done. Like, it's about winning the game now in a game that matters now. Like, it's not like club football where you can have like numerous attempts during a year to like score points, home and away fixtures in the Champions League, or like a lot of European Cup domestic tournaments like, the DFB Pokal, which I know of, or home and away matches, or the Italian Coppa del Rey. Not Italian Coppa del Rey, Coppa Italia, beg your pardon. Although, of course, in England, we do have the FA Cup and League Cup, which are all usually single-leg ties. Although, of course, the FA Cup does do replays for right up until, like, the 5th round, where, of course, I think now, of course, the quarterfinals and the semi-finals must be decided in a penalty shootout if it goes that far. Henrique is at PSG. I don't know who Henrique is. I think he is a Brazilian footballer. Did I say Henrique? I don't know whether I said his name. Thailand might have passed China if they win the next 3 friendly. Oh, they can overtake China in the FIFA World Rankings. Yes, obviously, yeah. I mean, well, we've had Belgium top the FIFA rankings in recent years, so I mean, I suppose for Thailand, if that helps them get a better draw for like the next Asian Cup qualifying games, then I mean that'll be good for them, I suppose. Since of course I know how hard it can be for Thailand to qualify for the Asian Cup, and of course there's a lot. There are actually some quite competitive teams in Asia now who have actually missed out on qualifying for the World Cup 3rd round, like Vietnam being a notable name, and Syria missing out, Tajikistan. All of them could have easily qualified. Of course, India can be a bit difficult to play, since, of course, I mean, India really should be doing better than what they've got, than what they're doing with their population size. Oh, Mika, but yeah, Mika was so lucky to survive Adelaide. I agree with that. Messi and Mbappe at the last World Cup. Yeah, I think obviously, like, FIFA were absolutely delighted to have France and Argentina in the final, due to having the 2 big names there facing off one another. Oh, Luis Enrique is at PSG now. Yeah, obviously, I'm just saying that he is a top manager, just like Hansi Flick, but the problem is the demands of international football can be very different to what it's like at club football. So obviously, some club managers like Enrique and Flick might struggle, since of course I know Flick's doing a great job at Barcelona, and of course Enrique's gone to PSG. So they are top managers. It's just that when you have so many one-off knockout games in international football and a group stage only lasts 3 games, then it's very hard to implement your best tactics because, of course, the smaller teams are always just going to sit back in a low block and neutralize everything you do. Like, the best teams don't always succeed in international football because, of course, the smaller teams cannot go toe-to-toe with you for very good reasons in that you just simply don't have the technical skills to do so. Your South Koreas, your Slovenias, your Serbias, your Denmarks, your most of the African nations, if you exclude Morocco, quite a few South American nations like Paraguay and Chile and all that. Costa Rica also a notoriously defensive team. Greece beating England. Oh my God, I don't know why we're talking about football again, but for those of you watching, yes, qualifying has been postponed until tomorrow. Rain is just too severe for qualifying to take place. I am just filling up time because, of course, me and my viewers have been waiting for qualifying to take place, and we've got absolutely nothing. I mean, yeah, we had Lando Norris win the sprint race ahead of Piastri and Charles Leclerc taking 3rd place after Max Verstappen was given a 5-second time penalty for infringing VSC rules when he narrowly edged ahead of Piastri on the restart. Very naughty boy yet again. And of course, he'll be taking a 5-place grid penalty for tomorrow's race if it does take place, because of course, we don't know how the rain is going to be like tomorrow. Because of course, I have had news from Will F1 that it is forecast to be heavy rain in Brazil, in Interlagos specifically, until the 10th of November, which is going to be another week of heavy rain. So we might not even get a full race on tomorrow, sadly, which, of course, I mean, that's going to be terrible news for Lando Norris, who desperately needs to who's got a 44-point gap between himself and Max Verstappen. And if there is only to be 3 more race weekends, then that means that Lando Norris will have to take at least 15 points on average in the last 3 races if he wants to win the championship. For Max Verstappen, I think he'll be delighted if the race is cancelled. And no, qualifying has not happened. Michael Alvin, I'm sorry, we've had no qualifying today. I don't know whether you're confused or not, but I'm just talking for the sake of Say and John, who just want to chat with me. Of course, I mean, Will's now left the chat. I hope you're doing... I mean, I know you've had problems recently, Michael, so I hope everything's well, but I mean, if you've got some real deep problems, I mean, I think you'll have to go and find a specialist or something, or someone who can really help you, because I don't know, because it does sound like you've got a lot of problems. Will F1 is... Well, of course, we all know why Will is loving it. Because, I mean, yes, I understand that Max Verstappen is probably, well, he is the better driver than Lando Norris, but in the context of this season, he's been very, very, very consistent and mostly mistake-free, apart from, obviously, what happened last weekend at Mexico, where he deliberately shoved Lando Norris off the track in order to impede Lando Norris's chances of winning the race, which I thought was serious foul play, in my opinion, and should have warranted a black flag when I actually got around to seeing the actual footage. That was pretty bad there by Max, I've got to say. And there's a higher chance of me becoming Supreme Emperor of the than Norris becoming World Champion. Yeah, well, you never know with Max Verstappen. I mean, if we do get a race on tomorrow, maybe we might see one of the back midfield runners like Lawson, Tsunoda, or Colapinto. No, okay, maybe, okay, not the 2 RBs, because obviously, if they nerf Max off the road, I mean, Tsunoda could get sacked, and Lawson would destroy his chances of getting a second Red Bull seat. We might see someone like Colapinto or maybe Gasly collide with Max tomorrow. Who knows? And before we know, I mean, Alonso might decide to get his elbows out tomorrow if he sees Max going wheel to wheel with him. Or even Lance Stroll if I mean, Max Verstappen suddenly spins off the start and he has to go and fight the back markers like Stroll and Zhou. Gasly, yes, Gasly might decide to take revenge on Red Bull because, you know, we all know Gasly still harbours a grudge against Herbert Marko and a couple of characters at the Red Bull hierarchy. I mean, Gasly got 7th in the sprint race. I mean, Gasly's been so good recently. I know, obviously, my own personal bias kicks in, but I've always sat down and one thought that if Gasly gets given a good car, then I think he actually could surprise a lot of people. I like Alex Albon, but I think we all know Alex Albon is just a okay driver at best, who is very much found his level in the lower midfield, so there's not much debate to be had there. And I think the British media got a bit carried away with his performances last year at Williams. Good season, but it wasn't like groundbreaking stuff, if we're going to be honest. And if anything, it was more a case of Alex Albon achieving near the maximum he could ever extract from a Williams. But as for Pierre Gasly, like, I always get this feeling there's always a chance he could actually really produce miracles if he was given the opportunity. You know, when he went back to Toro Rosso / AlphaTauri, then, I mean, for me, he was always, like, he was so, like, he quickly smashed Danny Kvyat. I mean, obviously, we're going to need a miracle for Lando Norris to win the championship, we're going to be honest. We're going to need a max DNF tomorrow if we do get a race on. And Lando Norris has got to win the race, absolutely. Like, Lando has got to be perfect for the rest of the season, regardless of how many races get cancelled or whatnot. And he's going to need a little bit of luck. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Liberty Media, I do think, were really hesitant in terms of whether they wanted to give Max Verstappen a black flag in Mexico, and but they also thought, well, he's been quite excessive in his blocking of Norris by shoving him from the road, because if you watch the onboard of Max's car in the second collision, then you can see that Max made no attempts to steer into the corner properly, and he did literally admit that he knew that by costing Norris time, he would cost Norris a chance of winning the race, because, of course, there's a 7-point gap between first and second, and there's only a 3-point gap between second and third. So, you know, Max exploited the rules to the maximum, really. And the fact that Lando was 4 seconds short of Carlos Sainz on the checkered flag proved that Max was very, very cunning in what he did. And I have to say, like, with what Max said post-race, I think there's a lot of stewards who probably sat there for, we should have given Max a black flag, or maybe rewrite the rules so that you can bring back a stop-go penalty where you cannot where you stop in a pit lane for 10 seconds and you cannot do a pit stop. Like, it must be a straight stop-and-go penalty for 10 seconds, and then you have to wait another lap to do your pit stop. I heard some Norwegian commentator say Sainz and Colapinto might switch teams because Colapinto goes to Williams and Sainz will partner with Max. Well, we have heard Christian Horner say that he would rather avoid a Carlos Sainz Max Verstappen partnership because he's scared of their two dads falling out with each other, because apparently things got a bit frosty between Carlos Sainz Sr. and Jos Verstappen back in 2015 when their sons drove together for the Toro Rosso team. Bottas is my okay, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I think I've made it very clear that my favourite drivers, now that Kimi's retired, have been Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen, despite his atrocious driving, and of course, Alex Albon, despite his tendency to be mid. I think obviously Ricciardo, yeah. Ricciardo, honestly, I wanted Ricciardo to leave F1 after 2022. I think when he made that terrible career move to McLaren, I think Daniel Ricciardo's head completely went, and I think all I'm saying is that due to the fact that 2021 was not a clean season between Max and Lewis, like, Ricciardo could have had a chance of winning the championship. what I meant to say is that obviously in a clean season of racing, in that both Max and Lewis would clear Ricciardo easily, but as you know, it was anything but clean with what happened at Hamilton going off at Imola, Max suffering tyre failure at Baku, and of course Lewis overshooting the start at Baku, the collision between the two drivers at Silverstone, Max getting hit by Bottas at Hungary, and of course Hamilton losing time because of the first lap collision, the collision at Monza, which of course allowed Ricciardo to win the race, and of course the subsequent collisions at places like Brazil and Saudi Arabia. And of course, we have to remember, of course, that Russia was Max and Lewis had to make their way through the field that day. And really, had Lando Norris and McLaren got the strategy correct, I mean, Lando really should have won the race instead of Lewis. But of course, Lewis actually did the right tyre strategy, and Max finished second despite starting towards the back of the grid. And Lando ended up finishing 7th or 8th, despite the fact he completely overshot the pit entry when he finally pitted for tyres 2 laps too late, which was stupid because, of course, I mean, the FIA let him off because they said, oh, because he was already slowed down to 40 miles an hour despite cutting the pit entry, which was like, yeah, but you didn't do the same thing for Kimi when he accidentally spun on the restart formation lap at Imola, where like Kimi gained no time. Well, he didn't gain any time. I mean, he didn't overtake anyone, but because apparently, I don't know, he spun and lost a position or two, they decided to give Kimi a penalty and stripped Kimi of, 1 or 2 points at Imola in 2021, which was absolute nonsense. But FIA gonna FIA, like I say, just like my favourite saying when Kimi used to race a Ferrari, Ferrari gonna Ferrari. Perez, Bottas and Perez, the dynamic duo. You know what I'm going to say? I once compared Bottas, Perez, and Daniel Ricciardo to, Daniel Ricciardo being like a bottle of Skittles vodka, Bottas to the Prime Energy drink, and of course, Sergio Perez, I compared Sergio Perez to a can of Bud Light. Yeah, that's what I think of them. They are the amazing threesome, those two, Bottas, Perez, and Ricciardo. The quantum of mid. No, not the quantum. The trivium of mid. Trivium of mid, yes. How can I forget? I mean, there's a metal band called Trivium, so how the hell can I forget the word Trivium? MBS needs to be permanently gone. MBS? Who's MBS? I keep forgetting. Oh my God, what? Oh. Martin Brundle, is it? Oh my God. MBS, I forgot who MBS is, sorry. Are you talking about someone with Sky Sports? Is it? Sorry, you're going to have to tell me who MBS is. KB would be Jamie Vardy if compared him to a footballer. There's a bit of a problem with that comparison. Oh, the FIA president, yes, Mohammed bin Salman. Yeah, he's an idiot. Yeah, absolutely agreed. He hasn't. I don't know what the hell he's doing. Like, I don't know. He comes out with the strangest nonsense ever. Apparently, he was involved in apparently favouring Fernando Alonso when he had a penalty decision at Saudi Arabia last year, where he was stripped of a podium and then he was reinstated on the podium because of a faulty pit stop. I don't know. And apparently, because of course, Mohammed bin Salman has also apparently got shares in Aramco, which is, of course, the Saudi Arabian sponsor of Aston Martin. Nah, Kimi Räikkönen would be Gareth Bale, because you got to realise Kimi Räikkönen was a very young, promising talent from the age of 21 years old. Jamie Vardy only, made his Premier League debut when he was, 25 years... Was it 25? 27 years old, actually. 27. He only made his Football League debut for Leicester City when he was 25. So, I mean, Jamie Vardy's more like... To be honest, he's more like Daniel Ricciardo, to be honest, or even Mark Webber. although Mark Webber took until the age of 32 years old to win his first race. So it's a weird one. I think Vardy's more like a cross between Daniel Ricciardo and Mark Webber and being a late bloomer, to be honest. That's what I really think of. And of course, I mean, if you really want an accurate comparison to Jamie Vardy, then you have to go back to Nigel Mansell back in like the 1980s. But of course, in modern F1, like it's very hard to be like an older driver and make your breakthrough really late on, to be honest. I mean, Mansell was like 32 years old when he won his first race. So, but of course, in motor racing, you can obviously drive to a much, you can compete to a far older age than you can as a footballer, to be honest, unless you play as a goalkeeper, where of course you only do like half the amount of running of all the outfield players in front of you. Or a defender, obviously, like Thiago Silva or Pepe, but they're even then, that's just rare cases, but oh my god. Fernando Alonso, did I compare? Nah, I once compared. I know, did I compare Alonso to Ibrahimovic? That's a bit of a poor comparison. I think a big comparison, and I'm going to be really controversial with this one. Fernando Alonso equals Jose Mourinho. Fernando Alonso equals Jose Mourinho. I know that sounds weird, but both of them have a reputation for polemics, being very, very controversial, saying a lot of big statements, having short-lived relationships with the teams they compete for, manage or drive for. Like Alonso's only like only drove for Ferrari for about 5 years. His second stint at McLaren only lasted 4 years. I think even his stint at Renault only lasted, his first stint at Renault only lasted 4 years, if you exclude his first year as a test driver. And then, of course, I mean, Jose Mourinho, I think, was it 3 years at Chelsea, 3 years at Porto, 2 years at Inter, 4 years at Real Madrid, another 2.5 years in his second stint at Chelsea, almost 3 years at Man United, 3 years at Roma. He'll probably leave Fenerbahce by the time we get to 2027. And then, of course, Mourinho will probably finally take on the Portuguese international job. David Hill was 30 when he started. Absolutely correct. I think his dad, Graham, was also 29 years old when he started. Sorry, reconnection. Okay, yeah. Similar characters, but Jose has kept himself in the absolute top for a little longer. Oh. Good luck telling that to Fernando Alonso fans. I feel Alonso fans might take that a bit harshly. I think Zlatan Ibrahimovic, I think, is a bit more aggressive in his personality, though. Physically and his personality is a lot more. I think he's arguably more charismatic than what Alonso is, and I think he's a bit more likely to like. The thing with Zlatan Ibrahimovic is that whilst he did have a very good football career, he never really was like one of the true absolute elite at any point, though, of what his position was on the pitch. Like, yeah, he was a very good striker, but there was always the likes of Zlatan. No. Robert Lewandowski, Luis Suarez. Early on in his career, he had to fight against Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, and Adriano. And then, of course, for me, Mourinho was arguably at one point the very best manager in the world, like 2005, 6-ish. Funnily enough, the same time when Alonso was a double world champion. That's why I keep thinking of Alonso being similar to Mourinho, because when they were on top, like, it was literally the same years, like 2005, 2006, when Alonso was double champion, just like Mourinho guiding Chelsea to back-to-back Premier League titles. And had it not been for what happened at Anfield against Liverpool in the Champions League, where, of course, Luis Garcia had his ghost goal allowed to stand despite the ball never crossing the line. Mourinho could have been the one beating AC Milan in the Champions League final instead. Of course, I know everyone remembers it as a Steven Gerrard final where Gerrard pulled his team back from 3-0 down to get back 3-3 within the space of 6 minutes and then won the penalty shootout with the likes of himself and Dietmar Harman suffering from massive cramp. But, you know, I mean, for me, like, Alonso and Marino were at their peak at exactly the same point. I know, obviously, around 2010 and 12, obviously, Alonso went to Ferrari and Marino went to Real Madrid. Very, very much the same status as being the biggest name in their respective sports. And just like, I mean, Marino and Alonso, Alonso failed to become world champion with Ferrari, and Marino failed to win the Champions League with Real Madrid. So, in many ways, there's parallels there that they both went to the biggest club / team in their respective disciplines and failed to get the very biggest prize, which they so badly wanted to coveted, which of course, you know, Marino wanting to be Champions League winner of Real Madrid, and of course Alonso wanting to become a Ferrari world champion, just like Schumacher, Kimi, and all the rest of them. And then, of course, around 2014, Marino returned to Chelsea. Alonso in 2015 made a return to McLaren. And of course, at that point, that's where I think obviously their careers begin to diverge because, of course, Alonso's career went horribly downhill, failing to even get on a podium. And then, of course, but Mourinho still managed to win the Premier League again with Chelsea. I mean, obviously, Mourinho then went to Man United, won the FA Cup and won the Europa League with them, and then finished second in the league, whilst Alonso was just on the way down at that point. Obviously, in recent times, Alonso has begun to find his form again when he got those 8 podiums last year at Aston Martin, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, whilst Mourinho fell out with Roma and now has gone to Fenerbahce in Turkey, so it's a bit of a weird one. Mourinho always had resentment towards the Cruyff family when they endorsed Pep for manager at Barcelona, yeah. I mean, in many ways, you could sort of see, like, I don't know. I mean, Hamilton, you could kind of compare him to someone like Pep Guardiola, I suppose, with Pep endlessly winning the championship year after year, just like Pep endlessly winning Premier Leagues, Bundesligas, and La Ligas with, you know, Man City, Bayern Munich, and Barcelona, respectively. Just win endlessly. Yeah, obviously, I actually made that comparison myself on an old Brawl F1 video, like 6 years ago. Well, I think you can find it on my channel if you look. If you scroll down the videos, you can find it. I actually did compare Salatan to Alonso, but looking back, I was a bit of a hasty comparison because I was strictly comparing F1 drivers to football players rather than just managers. I mean, I also remember comparing Jack Grealish to Kevin Magnussen, which I don't know what to say about that because Jack Grealish has actually gone on to play for England and Man City since I made that comparison. Because at the time, I mean, Jack Grealish was just playing for Aston Villa, and I think Jack Grealish went down into the Championship to play for Aston Villa. So in many ways, I thought both of them are very talented, but they're not very committed, and they're not like neither of them seem to know how to get the best out of themselves. But Grealish has gone on to do way better things, though, compared to Kevin Magnussen, who has just become stuck in the midfield. And his career has become very stop-start with, like, Haas's financial issues. So, you know, for Kevin Magnussen, yeah, he's never going to be... I mean, he probably won't even be in F1 next year, so it's a bit sad. Who else did I compare? Oh, yeah, Esteban Ocon I compared with Divock Origi. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I always had the feeling that they were both drivers on the cusp of blowing up, but also very much the potential to also completely fail to live up to the hype, which I suppose is sort of right, because I don't know where Divock Origi has ended up at, but he's definitely not a big club, and Esteban Ocon will be heading to Haas next year, so I was kind of correct on that prediction. I cannot remember who I compared Pierre Gasly to, and I can't even remember who the hell I compared. I can't even remember who the hell I compared Vettel or Hamilton to anymore. Like, I do remember that I compared Ayrton Senna to an old Brazilian footballer named Careca, who used to play for Brazil in the late 80s and 90s, and that they were both very much. I mean, Careca kept scoring loads of goals for Brazil, and then his national team career came to an abrupt end. I know there was some like someone in the comments that compared Felipe Massa to Kaká, since of course Felipe Massa's career as a top driver ended in 2009 when he crashed in Hungary. And then, of course, Kaká also suffered a horrible injury like a year later for AC Milan, and he was no longer the same player he was ever again. So, you know, I don't know what else to say, to be honest. It's sort of quite a funny one to compare. I'm going to save this video as like the bit where I started comparing F1 drivers to footballers. I'm really tired now, so, you know, 2 hours of streaming. I didn't think I'd be talking for this long. I apologize to anyone who's just come on to start watching. If you want to like and subscribe to Crystal Racing, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you again next time.